Craig Difford has been collecting cricket memorabilia for 10 years, but the jewel in the collection's crown has gone missing from his Hunter Valley home. Each piece of willow in the Slazenger collection boasted the signature of Sir Donald Bradman himself, the robbery knocking Craig for 6.
Putting a lot of time and a bit of money into collecting them over that, it's taken 10 years to get them. Finally have the set and then they're gone.
Craig says he was at a friend's house on Saturday night, and when he returned early on Sunday morning,
went downstairs, put the TV on and noticed that the back door had been smashed in,
The thieves had taken 10 cricket bats from a guest room, but luckily for Craig they didn't find the 11th. It's believed the entire collection would have been worth nearly $14,000 to buy, but after the Don's death they became real collector's items, possibly now worth as much as $80,000. And the robbery even has police stumped.
One would hope that if anyone's approached now knowing of this theft, that they'd contact us here at the Maitland Police Station, or they can contact Crime Stoppers.
The experience has left 33-year-old Craig fearing for the rest of his sporting memorabilia. As a result, the remaining collectibles have been locked away in a safe place, far from prying eyes. Adam Harper, NBN News.
By the time fire crews arrived at the Broadmeadow business shortly after 2 this morning, the blaze had taken hold of the building, destroyed almost $300,000 of stock housed inside, including rare antique car models on display.
Fire was fuelled by the contents that the owner had within the building, which was flammable liquids and oils.
A witness reported seeing flames coming from the front of the building, but crews from 5 stations could do little to prevent the widespread damage. It now appears the family business, which was leased for 11 years and has been subject to more than 25 break-ins, will have to be demolished. When fire crews arrived at the scene, they were confronted by the angry owner of the business, who accused them of taking too long to access the nearby water hydrants. Today, the fire brigade defended their actions, claiming they worked as fast as possible.
All the hydrants within the area were utilised, but when using large appliances such as aerial pumpers, it is required to relay pump.
Late this afternoon, fire investigators determined an electrical fault in the kitchen area sparked the blaze. As for the owners, they say they're prepared to start from scratch and rebuild the business no matter what it takes. Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
My care is for the children and the families that are here, and it is a dangerous corner, and we are lucky this time, and I just hope that in my time we never see anything that's fatal.
Take each match one at a time. That's the mentality being adopted by a surprisingly optimistic United team, despite suffering 2 consecutive losses and having no chance of making the finals. Even still, coach Lee Sterry believes the team has plenty to play for.
We've got 3 home games that are crucial to us to give our supporters and give our sponsors a confidence in us, even though the semis are long gone now. We want to certainly finish off the season on a bright note.
Even playing on the same field the Newcastle Knights will have churned up the day before doesn't worry the team, Sterry believing it could play into their favour. The players still too focused on the match to even worry about it.
Whether we're playing the top team or the bottom team, we still want to win, and it doesn't really make any difference to us, so we'll just go out there and give it our best.
Sterry has named a squad for Saturday night's clash. Anthony Manyaka will be unable to play for 2 weeks, suffering from a groin injury. But Sterry has confirmed that young star striker Daniel McBreen will be coming off the bench to get a start. He's been the team's best performer so far this season, with 5 goals to his name. Adam Harper, NBN News.
Heath Francis says people are never too young to learn about safety in the workplace, and he knows he lost his hand in a farming accident when he was just 7 years old. Today he encouraged university students to take all the precautions, saying that while he has a very fulfilled life, it's much better not to have to live with the consequences of an industrial accident. And he's hoping the message gets through.
The attitude has changed a lot as well, and that employers and employees are working together a lot more, as it's in everyone's best interest that work accidents don't happen.
Heath will be speaking at the Harbourview Function Centre tomorrow night. Meanwhile, the Newcastle Industrial Association is also encouraging people to put safety first, and its first female president in 36 years is calling on more women to take up the challenge.
The aim of the actual Safety Association is to provide greater awareness, education and training to people across all industries.
Brooke Webster, NBN News.
For the past 4 years, Trish Cave has cared for her 85-year-old mother, Nita, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Nita suffers from severe dementia and Alzheimer's.
I live with someone who doesn't know who I am.
Aside from this memory loss, Nita's behaviour is erratic and her personality changeable. Trish even had to have a fence built to keep her mother locked in the yard so she wouldn't wander off.
I think the hardest part is seeing her even physically and mentally really going down. I think that's, you see, you're carrying that with you all the time too.
It's a draining job, mentally and physically. Trish is just one of the people who would benefit from having access to support services provided by an Alzheimer's Family Resource Centre.
Because you become progressively isolated with the victim, carers are in danger of thinking it is only happening to them.
The Rotary Club of Newcastle is launching an appeal tomorrow night aimed at raising money to build the facility in Newcastle.
I think it'd be a beacon in the dark. It'll be a lifeline, you know.
Tanya Carlisle, NBN News. Express Post, it most certainly isn't. Colin Wardrop sent this postcard from Brisbane to his sisters in Scotland in 1889, but it was never received. Now the long-lost postcard has been returned to his granddaughter, Alison Britz.
I was very small when he died, but we've always sort of known about the family, and so in a way it's filling in quite a bit.
The antique postcard turned up in Aberdeen last month, prompting a search to locate a relative the card could be returned to. It's believed the postcard may have made an unscheduled detour along the way.
We've had our historians actually look at it, and there are hinges on the back of the postcard which would suggest that it's been part of a private collection and has now resurfaced.
Mrs. Britz never imagined all the worldwide interest the postcard has sparked when she first discovered her grandfather was the author.
I thought I'd ring the Sydney Morning Herald, and the journalist I spoke to said, "Do you realise what will happen now?" And I said, "Oh no, it's just nothing." And it's been incredible.
As yet, Mrs. Britz has no idea what she'll do with the postcard. All she knows, if she wants to send it anywhere, she'll hand deliver it. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
After a surprise withdrawal just before last weekend's game against the Bulldogs due to his leg injury, Adam McDougall's possible return this week has been the hot topic for fans and the team. And while McDougall has made it through most training sessions, a decision still won't be made until tomorrow morning.
Training and playing, which is the distinct difference, and playing against Parramatta, where you know it's going to be a very physical game. Conditions are probably not ideal if it's going to be a bit slippery and so on. So there are a couple of things that you've got to take into account.
McDougall's omission would once again pave the way for Justin Ryder.
It's better to be on standby than not at all, really, so I'm happy there, waiting in the wings, and if I get a run I'm happy, and if I'm not, well then I'll have to keep my head down and play good footy.
Julian Bailey is out of the squad to be replaced by Jared O'Doherty, and Robbie O'Davis didn't train this afternoon due to a bout of the flu, but he's assured Hagan he'll be ready to go tomorrow night. Both the Knights and the Eels line up with some of the youngest players in the league, which should ensure a lively matchup.
Well, there should be plenty of collisions and plenty of excitement if you look at, certainly our game last week, Parramatta beating Brisbane, so it's certainly going to be a good contest.
And then there's the absence of a home victory.
Yes, well, the away form's quite good, but we certainly could do with a home win, and I'm sure it's not too far away.
Catherine Turner, NBN News.
Well, interesting to see that Roy Simmons has had to call in sports psychologists for his Panthers in a bid to repair a recent form slump. They would be lacking a little bit in confidence with 3 games going by without a win, but the main thing they've got to worry about is their defence. Missed tackles is the root cause of Penrith's woes, and it's a part of Steve Carter's game that he'll especially need to lift as team captain. At the start of the year, Melbourne Storm were pretty excited about their home ground at Colonial Stadium, but the facts are they haven't even trained on it, and it looks like they won't get a chance until round 6. Melbourne were notoriously tough to play at their old ground at Olympic Park, but from 2 games at Colonial Stadium, they've been beaten by the Cowboys and the Bulldogs. What about this for a couple of runaway tries in the Country Cup? Narrabri Blues halfback Chris Swan, got to give him a rap, showed some electric pace, but unfortunately it wasn't enough to get Narrabri home over North Tamworth. And you see here was a bit of fiddling in the match too. The boys got into it a little bit. And on to round 4's tips, and tonight Warriors take on Dragons at Ericsson Stadium. Big credibility test for both sides. Dragons should have too much class for the Warriors. The other big one tonight is Marathon Stadium, Knights v the Eels. Eels' young hotshot side, they're fresh after their defeat against the Broncos. They will be confident, but of course I'm going to tip the Newcastle Knights. The Knights have won 6 out of their 7 games at Marathon against the Eels, and hopefully they'll do the job. Broncos too good for the Tigers at ANZ Stadium. Another great match is between the Bulldogs and the Eagles. I think the Bulldogs' undefeated record will come to an end. Eagles to win that one. I don't think Penrith Panthers will lose 4 in a row to the Cowboys, Storm and the Roosters to win their matches. That's it for me. I'll see you next week and good luck with your tips.
Marathon Stadium came under plenty of attention today, with ground staff actually hoping the soccer match could be delayed, but United hope everything will go as planned.
Look, it certainly will, and if the weather just stays, we don't get the heavy downpours that we've had all week, I'll be fairly confident that we'll be right for Saturday night.
There are contingencies though, should the pitch be affected.
So we could go back to Sunday night, that would be a good option, or alternatively we'd have to just reschedule the fixture altogether, but Adelaide arrive tonight, so they'll be here irrespective of what the circumstances are.
The wet forced United's final training session tonight off Adamstown Oval as well, with the conditions likely to rule out Peter Sekenis for tomorrow night's clash. The defender is battling an ankle injury that kept him sidelined last weekend. Meanwhile, Newcastle cricket officials are also crossing their fingers that the AFL match between the Swans and Collingwood at Newcastle's #1 Oval tomorrow doesn't affect their wickets just a week out from the semi-finals. The ground was unavailable during the semi-finals last season, and given the wet conditions and the AFL game, there are fears it may not recover in time this year around. It won't bother those competing in the Newcastle Triathlon, held in and around the city's foreshore and CBD on Sunday morning. The event starts from Horseshoe Beach at 8:30, with around 750 expected to start.
With cars queued for several hundred metres along the highway, emergency crews fought their way to the accident scene just north of Branxton, just after 11 this morning. The 72-year-old driver of this light truck was the first to be taken to hospital with serious chest injuries. Paramedics working for nearly an hour to free a 60-year-old woman trapped inside the Holden sedan. The Aberdeen woman was airlifted to hospital where she remains in a serious condition. The driver of the truck from Pelham later dying in hospital. Police believe the driver of the southbound truck lost control of his vehicle in the wet, and that when it finally came to rest after spinning out of control, it was struck by the northbound sedan. The tragedy marks the 6th accident involving a truck this week on the New England Highway, with police acknowledging the stretch of road is a dangerous one.
In particular, with the weather conditions do seem to impact upon road accidents, and of course with heavy vehicles involved, the potential is for more damage and more injured persons.
The RTA was called in to investigate the accident scene, but once again, wet conditions were blamed. Helen Kapelos, NBN News.
Picturesque Port Stephens is a holiday mecca, and here's the proof. Last January, an average of 1,000 people passed through its Visitors Information Centre, 420 people phoned in and 100 sent emails per day. The area has generally been aligned with the Hunter region, but a conflict of interest emerged between the Hunter Valley as a wine region and Port Stephens as an adventure destination.
Coming under the name of the Hunter, it was causing either confusion by consumers or they didn't understand that Port Stephens was part of that area. So we weren't reaching our full potential.
Earlier this week, Port Stephens Tourism voted to end that alliance, choosing instead to be part of a brand new region to be called the North Coast. But right now, much of Port Stephens is gearing up for its annual 3-day Marine Pro Billfish shootout. 25 boats are preparing to head out in search of mainly blue marlin, but the conditions aren't favourable and it could be downgraded to a 2-day competition. A decision on that will be made in the morning. Catherine Turner, NBN News.
It's not an immaculate surface. We didn't expect that, but I think under the circumstances with all the rain this week, tonight it'll be a great surface to play on.
You have to face it, the AFL supporters don't do things by halves, so when the Sydney Swans' favourite son Tony Lockett turned up today, it was all red and white. Well, almost. It doesn't worry the man they call Plugger, now retired. He travels the country as an AFL ambassador, trying to develop the sport in a serious push towards traditionally non-Aussie rules areas.
It's a very hard task, especially in an area like this that's really born and bred rugby league, but you just got to get out there and do your best. Who knows, one day you might just get a Paul Kelly or a Michael O'Loughlin right from this very city.
Close enough. Troy Luff is from Nelson Bay, and running out on his old stomping ground at Newcastle's #1 Oval, he proved locals can make it all the way. If this is a practice match, it makes you wonder what these guys will be like come the real thing in a few weeks' time, with some feeling in the middle. Swans favourite Dale Lewis got the first goal of the match in the opening quarter that saw just 2 majors kicked, as a wet pitch made it tough going for both sides.
A 1,060 cyclists rode to the challenge of taking the scenic route for Loop the Lake, now in its 5th year. Only the serious rode the full 85 kilometres, others began at Morisset for a 55k trek, while it was mostly families who jumped on at Swansea, riding the last 20k's to Spears Point Park. The children's ward at the John Hunter Hospital will reap the rewards from today's pedal power, the money paying for a therapist to arrange activities for young patients.
Each year in the 5 years it's really paid the salary of a person, so that we're thrilled to think that we can keep that program going.
And cycling and fundraising combined again, as 50 cyclists took part in the Westpac Rescue Helicopter Service Cycle Classic. It began in Kempsey 9 days ago, finishing in Newcastle this morning. Catherine Turner, NBN News.
While there's been nowhere near the devastation of the north coast, around 115 millimetres of rain has fallen in the Maitland district since last Monday, turning low-lying paddocks into swampy lakes. The Patterson River, while still swollen, is now decreasing, and just a few roads near Hinton and Largs are still covered in water. The big wet has had little effect on Phoenix Park market gardener Gary Burton and his crops, the rain causing more of an inconvenience than destruction.
Makes a lot of work, extra work when you've got to get it off the farm because you don't know whether it's going to flood or not.
Meanwhile, a heavy rainstorm caused minor flash flooding in Metford, Woodbury and Tanambert late yesterday afternoon. The half-hour downpour washed away soil and road surfaces.
It was like Lake Eyre, a big thing. The kids come down with their boards and was riding their boogie boards and everything. When it started to subside, we've seen all the damage that it had done.
More showers are forecast over the next few days. Tanya Carlisle, NBN News.
An increase in the number of Newcastle women who've reported having their drinks spiked and then being sexually assaulted is a frightening trend sweeping some licensed establishments. Today, those who run the city's pubs and clubs heard from police and drug experts on how they can prevent drug rape.
We've had some suggestions today of making a short video to put on the music clip videos, just letting people know about the issue. I think that's a good strategy. And having staff aware of if somebody is looking like they're in a bit of trouble, that they might have been spiked.
The seminar was organised by Newcastle's Liquor Accord.
To give them some information and education on how to manage drug issues in their premises.
Licensees have been told the use of designer drugs such as ecstasy in Newcastle clubs was still high, but a street shortage of heroin meant overdoses were down. Licensees can suspect but often can't be entirely sure if someone is affected by drugs. Most recognise that if they alert the police, it could be downright embarrassing if their patron is innocent, not to mention bad for business.
Our first responsibility would be to that person, for their care in their circle of friends, to look at that.
The responsibility of the licensed premises is to remove that person from their premises if they believe they're under the effect of a drug or alcohol, to the extent that they are affected, and then notify the police of their action.
Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
Appropriate housing allocations, close to transport, friends, family, services. Secondly, regularly occurring meetings between our two departments.
Physical violence, pushing, shoving, grabbing, intimidation tactics through the sheer weight of numbers.
The first of 5 muggings was outside the Delaney Hotel's ATM in Derby Street. At Wheeler Place, a 19-year-old was bashed and robbed by a gang of 8 young men of Aboriginal appearance. 4 of them then terrorised a young man outside time zone. Later at Islington, a 65-year-old man was assaulted and robbed. At Hamilton Railway Station, a young man fled after a similar attack.
We believe that there are a couple of gangs operating, or groups of people. Their sizes fluctuate from time to time and occurrence to occurrence depending on who's about at the time.
Facing court today, a 20-year-old alleged gang member accused over the Derby Street robbery. Police adamant they'll find his friends.
Police are downplaying fears of a crime wave, saying the number of street muggings and armed robberies is actually down, from 36 in January to 25 last month.
In the CBD, street hotspots include King, Hunter, Wharf Road, Derby Street and Civic Park. In the suburbs, there are a large number in Broadmeadow and Cooks Hill, others at Hamilton, Tyres Hill and Islington. Derby Street traders are troubled by the rise in crime.
It's going to detract from people coming to this area to use the restaurants and the hotel if that sort of level of violence keeps increasing.
As long as we come across with some lighting and light up the street a little bit more, it'll keep the bad elements away.
Vanessa Trezise, NBN News.
The striking red hull was hard to miss as it coasted into port today. The ship is one of 2 Polar-class icebreakers operated by the US Coast Guard to service the National Science Foundation at McMurdo Sound in Antarctica.
Polar Sea goes down, we break open a channel which allows ships to get in to supply the station for the year, basically with fuel and provisions.
The ship and its 150 crew members embark on 2 voyages to the ice cap each year. But with their current mission complete, they'll head to the Samoan Islands next week to research a hotter topic.
Currently embarked scientists on board for an underwater volcano research study that we're doing. We have a remote operated vehicle provided by NASA, and they're going to be using the Polar Sea as a base for doing the research for that.
The 13,000-tonne vessel will be open for inspection all this week between 10 and 2. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The company's plant currently produces 14,000 tonnes of aluminium dross and scrap a year and employs 20 staff. If the multi-million-dollar expansion gets the green light, Western Aluminium would be involved in 4 main processes: alloying, recycling the ash and dust, which is a byproduct of aluminium recycling, scrap metal recycling, and, in a first for this state, molten metal transport.
The molten aluminium is put into large flasks or crucibles that are preheated, and then these flasks are sealed, put onto trucks with overhead cranes, and the trucks take the crucibles to the customer.
And while there's no customers as yet, it's hoped the availability of it would attract other manufacturers to the area. There's also the promise of more jobs.
It'll generate 40 jobs on site, probably a similar number with ancillary jobs such as transport, contractors, engineering, etc.
An environmental impact statement is almost complete.
I encourage people, anyone interested, to get a copy of the EIS and read it. There'll be a lot of information that'll set out all the controls we have in place.
The proposal would then go before Council. Brooke Webster, NBN News.
Come on, come on.